I am Dave Henning with the Fresh Start Podcast, fresh ideas for business and personal growth. And my guest today is Scott Ballard from Hillsboro, Oregon. What you've been doing since you were 7 years old, were a dyslexic kid, kind of like what I'm doing right now. So, well, I think I grew up in the age when they didn't know what ADD was. Unfortunately, I was not medicated.
Yeah.
So thank you for being with me today, Scott. Let's have a good chat today, shall we?
Yeah, looking forward to it, Dave. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about your background, your story. You've got quite an interesting and unusual story. So, and in fact, I have family members who were or are dyslexic, and their parents had to fight for them with the school system to get things right. And
Right.
so tell me your story.
Yeah. So I was very fortunate, Dave, that growing up and having parents and a grandmother that were super supportive. And they said of me that before I went to school, I was the happiest kid in the whole town. And so I went on to first grade in Southern Oregon. And when I got there, about a month or two into it, I realized that I was not learning like the other kids. And so back in that time, the teacher actually came to your family home, and had dinner, and then kind of did an update with the parents of how you're doing. And my teacher said he's got to try harder, got to work harder. My parents were fairly strict, and they said, "Okay, you've got to buckle down." I did. It got worse. Finally, my teacher took my desk, put me in the corner, and said, "You're stupid. You're a dunce, and you'll never be anything but a janitor. And I don't want you to disrupt the class anymore or to be part of that." And so because I was raised to respect teachers and elders and people of authority, I believed her about myself, and was spiraled into suicide, attempting suicide, depression, running away from home and school, all kinds of problems. And then they came up with a great idea, Dave, that I should do first grade over again because I might get it better the next time. Now, this was in the 60s. They didn't know about dyslexia. I was severely dyslexic. And so I did it again. It was just as bad, if not worse. And so my mother and my grandmother had this prayer group that they ran for the students. And they were praying that in some way that there would be some help for me. Because they saw how it was affecting me, not being able to do school and all this. They were in a meeting in my second year, and a lady came walking into the prayer meeting, and she said, "I'm hearing what you're saying about your son. Tell me more." And they told her more, and she goes, "Well, my husband and I have just been transferred from New York City to Roseburg, Oregon, and he's going to be the pastor of the Methodist Church here. And I have just finished education on how to teach dyslexic kids how to read and write." So God answered that prayer. And so Mrs. Slaymaker became my tutor from that day forward for the next 5 years. And God did his first miracle in my life. It was never easy. It's never been easy reading and writing. But she had so much faith and had so much insight to the problem. She was able to help me get through school. And so that's really the beginning of my story, and also the revelation of my story about God and how much he cares about the individual, and even a small child that may be struggling, and that he can do things that we can't even hope or imagine for. So
That is amazing. The power of prayer, the fact that this family shows up
yes.
from the other side of the country. I went to college too early, right out of high school. I was 17, went up to Boston to our Christian college. Didn't do too hot, went home, worked for the Kodak factory. But I got to be 21 years old, and I thought, man, I'm really getting old. I better finish school. So I was too embarrassed actually to go back to Boston because, all the schools there, the famous name schools, and I was intimidated. I went all the way to Oklahoma and everyone west of the Mississippi River. And to our other sister school down there, a friend of mine from Rochester had been there. And I thought, well, I'll give it a try. And you know what they made me do was they actually made me take remedial reading to become a sophomore because I could not focus I couldn't remember what I read.
Comprehension.
So they had this computer thing that it would put a book up there or something, and I had to read it and learn how to read in paragraphs at a time. And then you press the button and you made it grow a little bit faster.
Yeah.
So over time, I have a little challenge with focus, apparently. But nevertheless, I have just a glimpse, nowhere near the challenges and the frustration and the hurt that you went through. But I can definitely relate to that. So tell me about how your sixth grade teacher impacted your whole life.
Yeah. So you're going to love this. So I'm in school. I have a tutor. I'm being tutored every day. And, you know, I'm really fighting with this self-image, the confidence, you know, of just surviving 13 years of school. Because I'm counting the days till I can get out of school and put it behind me. But you know, the thought came to my mind, Dave, was what am I going to do if I don't have an education? Because in the 60s and 70s, you know, if you didn't go to college, well, you were, you know, you something was wrong, and I couldn't see myself going to college. But I got to sixth grade, and the first day I got to class, we had a first year teacher. His name was Mr. Bacala, and we walked into class, and he says to us, now this is in the 60s, he says to us, take all the desks and put them outside. Well, immediately my mind goes not to a good spot because I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to relearn the hard way of learning again. And now he's going to start from scratch. So I go into a bit of a panic, and he goes on to explain through the first week, we're going to turn the classroom into a business. Everybody will have their own little business. Everybody will have a pot of money, monopoly money, and we'll do a stock market. And I'm going to teach you about the real world, and I'm going to teach all the subjects via this business. So I started with a little business, and I rented balls. If you wanted to play basketball on a recess, you rented a ball from me. And so we all started with the same, with everybody out of business, a little bit of money. Well, about a month or two into it, Dave, I was like, I started seeing opportunities, and I started seeing some of my classmates not really understanding how they could do this and what they could do and all that. Well, long story short, by the end of the school year, I owned pretty much all the businesses in the class, and I had most of all the money. Now, I couldn't read or write for my life, but I could sure see a way to serve people. I could see an opportunity. I could see, bringing a popcorn maker into class and serving popcorn at lunch. I could see making copies for people up at the office. I could see different things that I could do. And what Mr. Bacala did for me was made me realize that education may not be a way that I'm equipped to go forward in my adult life. But by the end of that year, I won an award. They called it Hustler of the Year. And what I realized was that I could actually do business if this was really what business was like. Serving people, creating value for people, taking something and taking it and making it more valuable. And I really understood that in a strange way that other kids and people didn't see. And so that's my sixth grade teacher experience. And so when I got out of high school, and I did graduate, they actually gave me a diploma. Some people question that, but I actually did. And when I got out, I got married very young. I've been dating my wife for 43 years now. I just starting businesses, but I knew nothing about it, but I kept doing it. failing, and my wife would say, what did we learn? What are we going to do next time? Because you're going to eventually get this, and when you do, it'll be good. So after about 11 failures in business, I got into a line of work. I had 3 people at church say to me, you need to think about being in the insurance business. So after the 3rd person told me that, my wife is praying. She goes, you need to look into this. And I said, well, okay, but what? I don't know what it's about. I don't know anything about it. So I looked into it. I found out you had to go to school. Okay, that's a problem. You had to take a test. That's a problem. You had to learn all this new language. That's going to be challenging. So I was just like, God, I don't know that I can do this. Like, this is not something. Long story short, I went to school. I passed the test by 1 point and started in the insurance business with $100 at our kitchen table. And in 5 years, we were the 3rd largest seller of our insurance, the one single insurance product we sold in the country. And in 21 years, we had about 4,000 agents, and we sold our company to a large life insurance company about 15 years ago, I guess. And we were, it was very, very successful and a great experience. So that's where my 6th grade teacher, that's the gift he gave me. And so that's the 3rd miracle of my life. And so when I retired from doing that, and we sold the company, I took about 30 groups of young adults on mission trips throughout the world, Africa, India, Haiti, Indian reservations here, different places. And on those long 16-hour flight back, I would always say, okay, God, what am I supposed to do now? I'm not a retired person. I'm not crazy about golf. My mind is very active. I'm interested in a lot of things. What am I going to do? People started calling me and saying, hey, I got a problem with my business or my leadership team or in my own business or my own life. And I was just helping people. And after a couple of years, my wife picked me up at the airport one day, and I was down helping a guy. And she said, I've been doing some research. This is actually a business, what you're doing. And so that's how we back-ended into our coaching, advising, consulting work that we do now. And we feel like, Dave, we haven't worked a day in the last 10 years because it's just been such a joy to do. And we love business people. We love entrepreneurs. We love that world. And I'm passionate about helping them.
That is a fascinating story. I can relate to that on so many levels with my own life and career. The entrepreneur thing is a roller coaster, as you know. And but the Bible says there's a whole list of gifts that God gives people who are willing to listen to his still small voice and follow. And even that scary word, obey.
Hey.
And you did that. You remind me of W. Clement Stone, who changed my life. He's an insurance guy, if you know who he is. Yes. He was the general manager for Napoleon Hill, the West Virginia newspaper man who wrote Think and Grow Rich. And Clem Stone started with $100 in Chicago as a young man and hiked up multi-story buildings and just knocked on every door. And by the time he died at almost 100 years old, he had given away millions of dollars to charity and to his favorite causes. But the reason I say he changed my life is because when I was doing radio, it was so easy with my childhood situation of being shy. It was easy for me to be in a studio room at a radio station all by myself in front of a microphone and talk to thousands of people that I never met. And then when my son was born and had some health issues with cerebral palsy, I went to the boss and said, I need a raise. And he says, well, I can't give you a raise. It's not in the budget, but if you'll I'll give you a desk in that room over there if you go into sales, and you can give yourself a raise. I was scared to death. I really could not imagine pounding the pavement, walking the sidewalk, going door to door, talking to small business owners. And I was living at a church campground right there. It was kind of a trade deal. I had mowed 23 acres of grass in exchange for a little cottage to live in.
Wow.
There was a tractor involved.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Yeah. A little red farmall tractor, I'll never forget. And this retired preacher, Drexel Ferguson from Missouri, you have to say Missouri, I think, or Missouri. He was the caretaker of this campground. And one day he came to me and he said, Dave, I've got this book here and I want to give it to you. W. Clement Stone book, A Success System That Never Fails, it's called. That book changed my life because he had little chapters, little hinges that swing big doors, and all these principles of going out and selling and with confidence and so forth. You never know.
Yeah. Isn't that the truth? Yeah. Yeah.
So now you're doing this coaching stuff. You've done the insurance thing, and it's so interesting. I can't get over your sixth grade teacher. In that generation, what a stunt to pull off on the kids.
Yeah. It was very revolutionary in his whole approach to everything. He before he retired, he was teaching in a private school up in the Seattle area that had changed their whole curriculum to this alternative way of learning, actually teaching based on real life, not based on educational systems or academia, but actually how to learn so you could do well in real life. And he changed the whole private, very, very exclusive private school in Seattle he ran for many years after he left the public system. But arguably 100 years ahead of his time in his thinking. And to think that was his first day of teaching in his first teaching job, and we were his first class. I'm eternally grateful for him and what he did, and I on and off had that conversation, and it's been wonderful.
So your sixth grade teacher really was a revolutionary thing for you personally, and a revolutionary thing for him to teach, as you explained, that how he just changed the paradigm shift that he made with kids engaging their brains, and that's cool. That's powerful. My dad was a machinist, Bauchelon, there in Rochester, and he wanted to be a school teacher. He had been working as a machinist, and then he worked 2 other jobs in the evenings and weekends. He was working all the time. And so he applied to be a teacher, went back to college in his 30s and 40s, got certified as a machine shop teacher when the original CAD/CAM computers were there, computer automated design, computer automated manufacturing. And it had those little punch cards you stuck in a machine, and you could program machines. Well, he taught that, and it changed his life. The point being that was the vocational technical high school. The reason I say that is it was considered that, well, all the kids that couldn't hack it in school, we'd send them to the technical high school and, let them go do some over there, and whatever. They got problems. They can't handle the real school. So, but then they ended up with a workable trade that made a lot of money. My dad taught machine shop, and he was an award-winning school teacher. His kids loved him. And, they had auto repair shops and stuff. My younger brother ended up, although my older brother and I finished up college and stuff, my younger brother ended up being a electrical contractor for his entire career and in Ohio, and made a splendid lifelong career of that. People loved him. He had the work ethic and stuff. All that to say, to your point, we don't know what kids have in them. And tell me how, if you would, how you use, now that you're doing this coaching, you've transitioned out of building this incredible insurance agency, and you're coaching now. Tell me how the use of questions works for you in your coaching business.
Yeah, so it's interesting. The questions are what open up or are the gateway to the solutions, to the breakthroughs, to the transformation or the miracles for people. But what happens is that I've been given this ability because I couldn't see my own ability when I was young. I've been given this ability by God to be able to see the superpower in you, the genius, the God-given ability in people. And so I use questions for them to reconnect to that ability, to what the gifts are that they have, and replace the lies that they have taken on along the way, right? That prevents them from doing and being all that they can be, that God has given them to do to fulfill their purpose. And so that's what the questions do. So I've become known as the question man. I'm not. I'm interested in the most provocative, insightful question that I can ask somebody, and then it becomes really about listening to the point of actually learning what the truth is as they respond in that answer. And we have witnessed and seen over and over again that mighty things have happened in those types of situations. And if you'll think of the Bible for a minute, I will give you where this all came from. When Jesus encountered people, people that were strangers or new people as he encountered them, if you're reading the scriptures over and over, oftentimes, even though he was God, even though he knew, even though all these things, he would say to you, David, he goes, what do you want? That's one of my favorite coaching questions, is to ask people what they really, really want. Not the generic answer you tell everybody, but go deep with that. And this I learned from reading the scriptures. Jesus never assumed that even though it was a blind man, he would say, what do you want? It's so loving. It's so kind. It's so penetrating, that question. But you have to ask the question and then be still yourself and give the people a space, give a person a room to actually sort that out in their own mind, their own soul. And so that's how we use that in that way. And I will say the other thing, because I'm old now and I've been around business for 41 years, and I've been very fortunate to know the Lord for 55 years. But I will ask the question that other people are afraid to ask. And I'll particularly do this with leaders in large organizations or companies, because there's nobody in their life that will ask them the hard question, the tough question. And I've really felt like God's given me that ability, that gift, that insight to do that. And that's where the great stuff happens, is in that moment and in that situation. So that's what asking questions is all about for me. So,
yeah, the popular TV show right now that has been very, very well received is this series called The Chosen. And you get a glimpse of the humanity of Jesus there, and that penetrating look, like when he met with Nicodemus. I call it Nick at Night.
Yeah.
For people who remember Nickelodeon channel. But yeah, he just had this look of love on his face. And like even the gentleman that he told, when he says, I've done everything I'm supposed to do. And Jesus said, go sell everything. But it says, and Jesus loved him. And to ask the questions in a spirit of love. And also he had the ability, what I hear you saying, this superpower thing, is he had the ability to see people not where they were stuck, but from what they could be if they could get unstuck. And I think that is a strong message for our culture today, for our country, even for our churches, for believers, is, where are you at? And what do you want with the rest of your life to look like, really?
Yeah, Dave, we actually coined a phrase. I coined a phrase around this years ago, doing group coaching with us. We called stuckedness. I made up a word because we had so many of these leaders that were stuck, and so we would have sessions where the whole session was to help them get unstuck, and we all have those spots in our life, those blind spots. And, Jesus was so great at getting people unstuck and seeing them of what they could be, of what God intended for them, the best version of themselves. And as they become that, they fulfill, they have happiness, they have joy, they have peace, and they share the happiness, the good news of what it is that happened to them with the world. And I ask Christians all the time, and I work with a lot of Christians, but I also work with a lot of people that don't know Jesus, don't know God, never been to church. And sometimes it's easier to work with them because they don't have these preconceived ideas. And they're much more honest and truthful about where they're at and what's in the way of where they want to go. And it's just fascinating to see that happen. So.
Yeah, I was reading Oswald Chambers is one of the devotional books I read, and he was saying that Christians are the most critical people in the entire world. I heard the statement that Mahatma Gandhi once said that I would be a Christian were it not for the Christians that I know.
Yeah. Ooh, wow. Yeah.
So we got problems. We got problems. I got problems, like John Maxwell. John Maxwell said, all God's children got problems.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing about that, and we're doing a book club right now called the Happiness Book Club, and it's a book by Randy Alcorn. It's called Happiness, and Randy lives in our city here. But it really is, and it should be, if we really believed what Jesus did for us, and we really believe what God's plan was to rescue us, and we really believe that heaven really what it is, what he says it is, and we really believe that we've been forgiven, we've been restored, and that God loves us unconditionally. If we really believe that, wouldn't we be the happiest people in the world? Shouldn't we be the happiest people in the world? And what are the reasons why we're not? It makes no sense when we really think about it, but we do not approach faith, and faith is not taught in churches and seminaries with this idea that happiness is actually who God is. That's his nature, is happiness. When he said in Genesis that I made this and this is good and this is made in my image, he was happy about it. Now we go into churches, and I've been in churches all over the world, and I go to a third world or majority world country, and they're ecstatically happy. They have nothing. They're going to die tomorrow. And I go into a church in the Western world, and I see people somber and sullen and sad. And I'm not saying that we shouldn't mourn with those but I'm saying, shouldn't our identity be in the happiness that we've been saved from hell? We've been saved from all that pain and agony for eternity. Do we not believe it, or are we stuck in our old faith? These are the things we talk about.
I remember a preacher who once said, if you're happy, notify your face.
Notify your face, yes. I've actually used that on people.
There is a verse in the Old Testament, might be in the Psalms, where it says that God laughs over his children.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
He has a level of enjoyment with us, hopefully.
Yes, yeah. We're his children, and we were made in his image, and he loved us so much. He's so happy with his creation. He sent his only son to die for you and me. That is somebody that is as dedicated as you can be to bringing happiness and love and peace and joy to us as his children. And then he's gone before us and created heaven, the new Jerusalem, the new creation, with no sin, with none. And that's what we have in store. And if I can't be happy about that, even though maybe my circumstances today are not the best, if I can't be happy about that, wow, then how do I expect the world to actually know my Lord and Savior?
Yeah. How beautiful are the feet of those who have been, who are bringing the message.
Good news, the good news. Amen and amen to that. I appreciate that you've let me say that. I've been on some shows where they're not pleased with me talking about the happiness of a believer, but that's okay. Yeah.
We're here, and we're not going anywhere.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I'm speaking with Scott Ballard. And Scott, this has been a really amazing chat. We've had a chance to meet. We never met before. It's once again, I don't believe in coincidences. This is one more divine appointment, thanks to our friends from Manchester, England, who put this service together where we could connect. So Thank you for being here. And how would somebody know if they were perfect fit for your coaching? How can I help you? How can I connect you with them?
Yeah. So you can reach out to me at confidencecoach.org. And what we do and offer to people is we believe in serving people before they become a client or order. So if you want to talk to me about your stuckness, you want to talk to me about your faith, you're not a person of faith and you want to find out what your true identity is and quit getting stuck in the lies and find the truth about that, and you want to build that into your life, go there, grab an appointment, and we'll talk about it. And that's what we do. And Dave, this has been just made my day. This has been super. And I think I'm more excited to meet you now that we've had this than I was before. So we'll be friends as we go forward.
That'd be good. I want to tell you a quick story about entrepreneurs based on your experience of renting out basketballs and doing all this stuff. That's hilarious because it's cool. So it's so cool. Somebody I interviewed, I like to ask the question, and I'll wrap up with this question, which is, what was your very first job when you were a child? And this person answered, well, I was 7 years old and I decided to have my own lemonade stand. And so my mother helped me out, and she squeezed the lemons and made the lemonade for me, helped me set up. I got a little card table set out in the front. Here's the entrepreneur part. 7 years old, he was thinking like an entrepreneur at 7 years old. He said, I got the schedule for when the trash trucks came by. And back then, it wasn't all those automated trash trucks. It was a couple of guys hanging on the back of a truck. And so he had set up first thing in the morning on the days that he knew that the trash man was coming, and he would sell out by noon. So that's a true entrepreneur right there.
I love it.
So you already shared any other job when you were a kid that stands out?
My parents in our yard had two of the biggest walnut trees in the world. And so we would pick the walnuts, and then my mother had a friend that had a kiln that dried the walnuts. And so in the fall, we would pick them 50-pound bags, and we'd get them killed and bring them back. And I would crack them and take the shells off, and I'd put them in mason jars. And I would take my wagon and I would go sell them door to door to all the women for baking. And I did that, 7, 8, 9 years of age. I started doing that for the Christmas season, the baking season is what we called it. And so that was one of the first things I ever made money for myself at. And then I would do other things, like in the summer, I'd put on carnival for kids in the neighborhood. I picked beans. We were a working family. My dad was the hardest working person I've ever known in my life, and a man of God, and just a tremendous example. I started at a pretty young age, and it just seemed natural to me just to do stuff like that.
Oh, very, very awesome. I've been speaking with Scott Ballard. Scott, thanks again for being here on my podcast. I really appreciate it. And I'm Dave Henning with the Fresh Start Podcast, fresh ideas for business and personal growth. Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.